Well, that sounds nice. We could just do that. But I wanted to play a little sort of sound intro just to get things started. This was a part of a score, shall we say, that I put together when I was working with my buddy Tony Conrad. He was doing a big installation piece in Sydney, Australia, and this was to be a piece to be played at one of the gates. A quite mystical piece, but I liked it very much. Was for mandolins, bowed mandolins, and so I just played the darn thing. Okay, so let's get started by, now, I'm going to, I have to tell you that I'm just going to put everything on the screen, and so you're going to watch me fumble through a few things, but believe me, it's not completely mindless. We'll be able to figure it out as we go, a little bit. And the first thing to do is to figure out how to get the disc to come out. And there it comes, okay. So I thought what I would do is retrace some key elements of my overall career or lifespan in the arts, starting with the time that I came to New York, and touch down here and there, here or there, here and there. I can't cover a lot of things because we don't have enough time, and to be honest, as you'll see, the way that I sort of developed my career, if we can call it that, was a little bit haphazard. And one reason for that was that I arrived in New York actually involved philosophically, shall we say, in the idea that art and cultural activities, organized cultural activities even more generally, were to be attacked and destroyed and not supported. So, in other words, I would never have gone to this organization, School of Visual Arts, and I was completely embarrassed that there were museums and other institutions where traditional features of culture were being presented. I had been very, very interested in music during my college days, and as I became aware of the most exciting things that people were talking about in music in those days, and now I'm talking about around 1960, if you can believe that, 1960, a lot of that had to do with activities called Fluxus. And today, we look back and call it Fluxus. At the time, Fluxus was a project of George Maciunas, a Lithuanian who was living in New York, and he associated himself with a whole group of very, very interesting downtown artists, and these were people who made word scores and sort of, in effect, corrupted the whole institution of music composition in a series of strange new ways. And I loved this. I thought, at last, we can demolish the whole institution of the composer in the Western tradition. Maybe we can get rid of it. And this was one of my main motivations in moving to New York to sort of pursue this. I had a friend, Henry Flint, who was even more radically directed in this way than I. He wanted to actually destroy the museums and dismantle all of the cultural forms, including checkers, tennis, I mean, just all institutionalized cultural forms he wanted to get rid of. So, but I did like music, and I discovered that my friend Lamont Young was of a sort of parallel inclination in many respects, and I joined a group that he was working with to kind of replace organized composition with a form of improvised sound. And I had been very interested in very, very simple kind of performance that really derived from the fact that I was really a very bad violin player. And I had been taking lessons for years, and once my teacher realized how little I was going to practice and how ineffectual I was, he said, if you want to sound good, you really have to just practice slowly, slower and slower, and in tune. Practice in tune and very slowly. And I tried this, and I found that it actually worked. And I was very interested in this idea of playing slowly and in tune. And it turned out that my friend Lamont Young was interested in playing with a drone sound. I said that I would like to play the drone. This was the most exciting version I could imagine of playing really slowly and in tune. So over the course of several years, we produced a new kind of music, almost totally new kind of music in effect. And I thought I'd just play you a few seconds of it. The idea here was basically that instead of following some kind of instructions that a composer would give, whether it was a graphic score or some word score or any kind of a score, instead we, that is the musicians themselves, would set loose the sound in the environment and let the environment shape the sound and then mold it almost in a physical sense. We would get involved with it in the dimension of time and let it shift and move. And a good way to do that would be to hold very sustained sounds and to let them interlock and interlink using the physics of the harmonic series. I know, now that's a key phrase, to let loose, and I'm not going to explain it further, but for those of you who are involved in music, you may have an idea of what I'm getting at there. Now, I have to go, because I didn't bring all of the CDs and everything with me, I have to go into Google myself here. But you could do this too, you see, and then I find that we have, let's see, what did I want to find? I want to find, I'm going to find Day of Niagara, which is a release of some of this early sound that we recorded in 1963 or 4 or something. I think this is from 1964. So here's a little time. I'm just going to play a little. You'll hear Lamont Young singing. You'll hear me and John Cale playing stringed instruments. I'm playing violin, and John Cale is playing viola. And we tried to play it as loud as we could so that it would like really get in your ear, fill the space, and obliterate an awareness of a compositional other, you know. So we could even kick this up a little in volume, I think. Yeah, just a little louder. Thank you. See, the sound person is intuitively engaged here. The picture, by the way, has nothing to do with this, so I'm not, it's just something that was added here arbitrarily. Okay. So the thing about this was no one had ever heard music like this before, and it wasn't called minimal music at the time because there was nothing like it. But it certainly started off in that direction. It started off in a completely different direction from that of Steve Reich and Phil Glass, because their music was based on repetition and sort of like the idea that you're the composer and you organize the notes and they repeat and so forth. And ours was really, I felt, although later it turned out Lamont disagreed with this because he likes to be the composer, I felt this was a way of completely eliminating the composer. So it turned out that a lot of the people who were doing Fluxus works at that time really wanted to be artists. There were people like Robert Morris, who was making Fluxus work, like the sound of a box and the sound of its own making, and who then started making sculpture. Walter Di Maria, who made Beach Walk for the anthology that Lamont and George Machunas put together, but then was making sculpture. Emmett Williams, who was a poet, and so forth and so on. And these people, although I liked some of them very much, they were committed to professionalism that I felt very uncomfortable about at the time. And you have to realize that I was, like about 20 to 22, so I could afford to be uncomfortable about anything that I wanted to be uncomfortable about. And by the way, I recommend that you be uncomfortable about stuff, like if you try. On the other hand, I did want to start off by saying, you may not want to use me as a model because I was really, in effect, a failure at this. That is, trying to destroy composition, for example, it turned out in the end did not work. People are still composing stuff all over the place. It was a good start, but it didn't really work. And although I picketed with Henry to destroy the Museum of Modern Art and destroy Lincoln Center and so forth, they're still going too. It didn't really work. We were idealists. So, yeah, but I did, at the same time, I did discover that there were other people in town who were making work who didn't really care about the fact that they needed a museum or they needed a gallery or somebody to buy their work or whatever. And these were what turned out to be called underground filmmakers. And the underground filmmakers just seemed to be, to me, to be driven by some kind of psychotic inner energy, that had nothing to do with being able to get anywhere in life. It was like a kind of documentary impulse that inhabited this group of people. I was especially attached to Jack Smith, who made Flaming Creatures. In fact, I made the soundtrack for his notorious film, and Ron Rice and a bunch of others, Piera Helixer and Angus MacLeese, and I didn't want to make films. I didn't want to have anything to do with being a filmmaker at that point, but I respected the fact that these were people who seemed to be bringing a secret reality to life, one that was the most important thing in these people's lives, but that only existed as an image on film. So, for example, Jack Smith's creatures, his flaming creatures, were wonderful people who led fairly pedestrian lives, but then when they got into drag, they became real. It was really their life, and in that sense, it was I later came to think of this as kind of like documentation of the true idealization that was going on. Eventually, I realized that some of the ideas that I had in terms of film sound would only be realizable if I made the films to go with them. And this was a real problem because I didn't really know how to make films, and I didn't want to make films. But then again, I had been experimenting with Jack Smith using flickering light, and I decided, well, we should make a film using flickering light. But then I had a huge fight with Jack because I ran off with his leading lady, and it was really bad. And so since we weren't going to work together, I realized I should make the film. And I made a film called The Flicker, which then, it seemed like to me to be not very extreme in conceptual terms, but it was a knockout for most of the filmmakers who didn't really think you could make a film that would just be made using black and white frames. And not only was it just made with only black and white frames, but it turned out to be a good movie. And if you want to go see it, they show it all the time at Anthology Film Archives. I'm not going to show you the Flicker because it's a half-hour long, but I do want to show you another film, the follow-up film that I made with my wife Beverly, who was the lead. She was the one. And this was called Straight and Narrow. It's only 10 minutes long, so I can show it to you right now. And it's a film that was, in other words, like not thought of in terms of minimalism per se, but was thought of in terms of the ambiance of the time, where doing a lot with a little was something that I realized was possible through the music. I knew through the music, doing a lot with a little what happened? See, Straight and Narrow, kind of, yeah, okay, it looks like a nice, polite film. But at the time, I have to say that my thoughts about it were very different from that. I thought, okay, first of all, this is like this quaint little abstract film. It's made with 4 images. I mean, there's actually 2 images, and they're negatives. One's just vertical stripes, and one's horizontal stripes, and then the negatives of them. And using just these really routine small things. See, then I think, okay, now I'm going to make a nice abstract film. But I'm going to, instead, I sort of felt at the time I was like making an effort to really dismantle the whole ethos of abstract art by making a abstract film that would kick ass, like I really wanted it to do things, to provide, let's say, unexpected resources to the viewer, So I wanted it to make, it doesn't do any, there's nothing in it. I wanted it to move. So it has some kind of weird motion that's sort of undefinable. And then also, if you look carefully, you'll see that, I mean, there are other projections where you see it more clearly. But this is a black and white film, and yet there's traceable amounts of color that appear in as a direct result of the way in which the sequencing has been produced. There's a trick to it. And it's sort of like based on a perceptual algorithm or perceptual phenomenon that you can find out about if you look up Benham's top. It's a way of it's a device which produces a subliminal color using a black and white image, and I wanted to do that to sort of like really undercut the whole premise of the thing by having it too colorful, too moving, and too fun. At around this time, though, there was a movement underway as a response to a whole group of filmmakers' work that was also based on sort of slow and studied presentation of imagery, and it was called it was named by P.M. Sidney structural film, and it included some really, really interesting and wonderful makers like Michael Snow and Hollis Frampton and Ernie Gare and a number of other people, Ken Jacobs, and people whose work I came to like very much, but then it turned out as I began a teaching career, and I realized that this stood a very distinct possibility of becoming a sort of dominant ideology, that is, of structural film, and at the same time, I realized that this was a kind of a formal structure, that is, the structural film. What we were talking about was a kind of manipulation of the formal terms of filmmaking. I had seen that happening already in music 10 years earlier, as I already described to you. I'd seen a manipulation of the formal conditions of music making, composing, and making. And I had stood on the sidelines during the whole conceptual art movement, but I had watched the same kind of thing happen in painting and sculpture. That is, when very formal preconditions were developed in such a way that they finally dismantled the whole project of sculpture, so that suddenly instead of sculpture, you began having things like gas released into the atmosphere and things like that. And so I thought, wait a minute, why is film now taking up the project of a kind of formal filmmaking when the artists have already moved through this and have gone on to the next thing, and the musicians have already done this a long time, performance has done this a long time before. Why are we doing this? And I thought, the only thing to do here is to race to the end of this game and, just try and like show, okay, this is where it's going to get to, And the first thing I thought of to do that was that, like what I had done in music, namely to use long durations and no movement. And so I was intent on making a film, say, that would last for, instead of, Andy Warhol had already made a film that lasted 24 hours, but that was nothing. And I wanted to make a film that would last, say, like 50 years. What about that? And rapidly, of course, it occurred to me that making a film that would last 50 years would mean that you'd have a reel so huge that no one could lift it, and it would probably also deteriorate by the end of the reel, and no projector would last, the bulbs would blow out one after another, and so forth and so on. And this, in point of fact, making a film that would last 50 years would entail a redesign of the entire system of film presentation and making. And I puzzled with this at great length. And then one day I was lying in my bed in my loft on 42nd Street, and I was looking at the ceiling, and I thought, oh my God, I just painted the ceiling, and now it's yellow already, and that was just 2 years ago. And it clicked on me, this was the rate of change I was interested in. And what I would need to do would be to use this cheap white paint as an emulsion material, you see, and then allow the film to appear over the course of decades as the film gradually turned yellow. So I made these things that I called yellow movies, in anticipation, of course, that they would eventually be yellow movies. And these were, let's see, I'm going to quit this. Let's see, I forget what I'm doing here. I think oh yeah, I have to eject this. See, I'm not going to be really clever. You'll just have to watch me fuss around here. There it goes, okay. So I decided to make these yellow movies, and now I'm going to go and show you what they looked like. I have to go to this website called tonyconrad.net, which some students put together for me some time ago. Where is it? Let's see, there it is, okay. And it has enter. And let's see, I hope I can find what I'm looking for. How did we find that before? Oh, this has a lot of stuff on it, this, oops. And it hasn't even been upgraded in a long time. Oh, images, here we go. Okay, so let's see here. What do we got? Oh, here. So here I am sitting in front of a yellow movie in 1973. I made these panels, I made these yellow movies by painting with this cheap paint, and then blocking this off, you see, so that you would know which area is the movie, and in the right screen, aspect ratio. And these were made on mostly using photographer's background paper. I think I can make this bigger so you can see it. That would be generous of me, wouldn't it? Let's see, zoom in more. No, oops, okay. So then what I did was I had a show at Millennium Film Workshop downtown, and I called it 20 New Movies by Tony Conrad. Tony Conrad presents 20 new movies. And here you see me sitting at Millennium in 1973. I had long hair and I smoked, if you can believe that. And that's a black and white picture. Here's a color shot of one. light. This was a violation. You see, once you get a paradigm, then you can violate it. So I made some that were yellow already, figuring they'd get more yellow or whatever, you know. And then I made some that were dark yellow already, and just to try to mess myself up, you know, like, yeah, I invented it, I get to mess it up too, you know. That's, yeah. So it's this very destructive idea. In fact, this whole thing was designed, you see, to be an intervention to try to, like, throw the whole course of development of structural film off. You know, to say, like, okay, let's get it over with. Let's stop that. You know, like, too late, too little, too late. Come on, guys. So this intervention, of course, didn't work. Nobody paid any attention. I spent all week putting this up as though it were a gallery at Millennium, and put up my 20 yellow movies, and then, you know, like a lot of people came to see what I was doing because they knew that I had already made a couple of interesting films, and so what was I up to now? And they came and they looked at these, and then they went home. And some people thought, well, it was funny, you know. But there was really only one super positive response, and that was Jonas Mekas, the impresario of the downtown underground scene, he wrote at that time a regular column in the Village Voice, and he wrote a whole column on this presentation, and he said, Conrad's best work. And I thought, oh, I don't know about that, but yeah, that doesn't say much about my filmmaking ability, but okay. And that was all the feedback I ever got for, you know, and then I took them home and I rolled them up and put them away. And it was only then, 35 years later, around 2006, that one day, apparently, I haven't verified this, but Jonas, meanwhile, had become quite the fashionable artist in Europe. I mean, he's not presented here with the same éclat and vivacity that he is in Europe. And so he was sitting with the curators of the Lyon Biennale, which was devoted to duration that year. And it was like Nicolas Bourriot, who you may have encountered in your reading, was one of the curators. And he said, oh, you know, speaking of duration, there was this guy in Buffalo who made these films that were supposed to last for 50 years, you know. Oh, yeah, so, okay, yeah, that's interesting. So they got in touch with me, of all things, on the basis of Jonas's actually remembering and bringing this for, yeah. So I thought, okay, so I went and met with Briot and the other curator, showed them my slides. And they said, oh, okay, so, you know, like, I got invited to come to Lyon and show these yellow movies in the Biennale, the biennial or whatever. And so I went, and then I had to put them up. And as I was putting them up, one of the curators came by and said, oh, you know, saw me suffering there. Oh, may I help, you know? Oh, okay, so I said, yeah, that'd be really useful. And so we started to put it up, and then he looks at it and he thinks like, oh, wait, he'll help some more. And we put up 10 of them. And by the time we had finished putting up 10, all of the curators were there helping, and they're all saying like, oh, yeah, it's the best in the show. You know, and I'm thinking like, what's wrong here? Because I had no idea what they were seeing, you know. And what I didn't realize, of course, was that in the intervening 35 years, that something had happened to the understanding of what was going on in artistic representation. There was a way in which it became legible as an intervention in the disparity between painting and film, and that the clarity of the image and the clarity of the presentation helped to bring this actually into visibility and focus, you know. So the long shot in the longer run, what this has meant is that it provided me entree to the New York gallery situation. Now I have a gallery in New York, and I also showed yellow movies in the Venice Biennale. It was selected by the curator, actually, to show there. So this was a weird form of success, I think. And see, this, I want to point out, you know, like, I'm proud of this, okay? But don't copy that, because this is one of the most conspicuous routes to failure you can imagine, you know, is to do something that's completely incomprehensible, but only comes to light 30 years later, you know, as a mark of a distinction in some way. Going back to the 70s, though, I want to say that this wasn't the only thing. This was the beginning, and then I went on to do some other, I did some other things. See, here's the program from Millennium. Tony Conrad, 20 new movies. It's, you know, like, it's not, you can't, it doesn't all fit on here, but down here it says 20 new movies, and then each one was listed here with the, you know, like in a professional way, with the emulsion. This one's citron tinted low luster enamel. Speed Flex latex colorizer by Brooklyn Paint and Varnish Company on white seamless paper, you see, and so forth and so on. Let's see, I want to show you some of that, one or two of that. Well, I don't know if I have time to show you. What is this? I don't think this is me. So let's see, how did I get images here? I did something. Let's see, if I go to New Window, and then I go to Google, and then I go to Tony Conrad, and then I go to Images. What happens? Nothing? No, everything. Okay, so here's a message. Now here's a shot of, from, where's this from? I don't know. This might be from the Biennale, but look at this is, it's so small. What's, well, you can see it, what it looks like anyway. That's, I'm not gonna play with it, okay? But these are generally all about the same size, and they're, you know, sort of like the size of a screen that you might have in an informal showing in your basement. And let's see what else we have here. Oh, I know what I wanted to show you. I had decided that oh, by the way, I'm not the only Tony Conrad. See this guy? He's a CEO or something. He must be really cool, because there's a lot of information about him. True story, but it's not me. Okay, so here he is again, see? He's handsome. And okay, so I recognize the fact that the yellow movies involved a manipulation of the whole understanding of where my intervention was in the process of, in the process of making the film. That is, when you make a film, or when you shoot a photo on film, I'm not talking about digital, but when you do this on film, see, where this started off was that Kodak makes the film, right? And they put it in a box, and then they sell it, and then you put it in your camera, and what you get to do is push the button and just point the camera. And then you put the film back in a box, and you send it to a lab, and they develop it, and then you see what you got. And I thought this was like pathetic manipulation by Kodak, and that I should actually take control of the whole process. In fact, you see, that's what I had done here. I didn't let Kodak make my films. I made my own films. I admit that I didn't make the emulsions, you know, but I did make the films. And I thought I should take control of other aspects of film, of the film process in addition, because this would be an interesting sort of way to demonstrate alternative understandings of the formal system that, that is being addressed by the so-called structural film. Okay, so one thing that I did was to modify the development and exposure processes. In the way by when I say modify the development, one thing I did was to basically pick a metaphorical process that I could use instead of normal development. And what and the reason that I picked cooking, and the reason I picked cooking is because I had an infant son at the time, and I was, you know, like doing a lot of housework, and I was really, you know, co-parenting, and it was really good to be in the kitchen a lot of the time. So I started cooking films, and I roasted some, I curried some, I made Creole, I made a variety of forms of film. And what was interesting about this was that when I baked film, or roasted the film, that it became crispy. And so, you know, when I just curried it, I could show it, and it was quite pretty and everything like that. But when I baked it or roasted it, it was too crispy to project. And you could, so that even though it was beautiful, you had to just look at it as is. You know, you couldn't unspool it. It would just like lie in the pan, and you look at it and enjoy it like that. It looked wonderful, but this was a completely different situation from anything that, I had imagined earlier. I was very fascinated by this revision of the examination process. I think maybe the ultimate extreme in that direction was this pickled film. This is a, let's see if I can magnify this so you get an idea of what it's really like, because this was really cool. I really liked this stuff. I made a bunch of these, or put up a bunch of these, as my mother would say. Oh, wait a minute, what happened? Wait, full size and two size. What's going on? How does this work? I don't know. I had it going, and then there. I think this is maybe the best I can do. Okay, but can I, wait, if I go up here, no, this isn't going to help. Okay, so full screen, good deal. Okay, there. That's not full screen either, but I don't know. Okay, so these were put up in the way. I followed a recipe in my that I'd got from my mother's old Fanny Farmer Cooking School cookbook for pickled onions, and pickled these. This is pickled Eastman Kodak 7302 from the emulsion batch 2440502. And this was 11 of 12 at the time, and it was made, this one was made in 2006. This was a remake. The first batch basically it became the tops rotted through, and they got pretty weird looking. And I did remake some in a decade ago, and this is one of those. So this is nice. They looked like this in general, you know, and you get to see here the beautiful sort of different effects, surface effects that happen, the way that the film darkens in the light over the course of time, and the way that in the middle it's different. And then, of course, there's all of the bay leaves and peppers and allspice and everything like that. Okay, so this was important to me because here was a film which you, in a sense, had to view through the refracting environment. You know, you didn't use a lens to project an image. Here, in a sense, the glass and the water act as a kind of refractory mechanism for viewing the film, but the film is inside. So it's like a lot of the processes of film are completely reversed here. The film is, in its usual way, is separated from the viewer. There's a lot of things to say about that, but I'm not going to go further right now. Okay, so some of the other things that I did at the time were, for example, to play with the fact that film can be exposed in a variety of different ways, like it can be exposed by electricity as well as light. So I got a transformer and hooked it up to a salt solution and ran a film through the salt solution across electrodes in the dark to electrocute the film. I tried to electrocute it, and of course it was a little dangerous to do this in the dark with 9,000 volts, but later I did it with a Tesla coil, which is then less dangerous but has 250,000 volts. And this was interesting. Now I want to move ahead. You know, so this was a period of intervention that I was involved with in the early to mid 70s. After that, I sort of turned in a somewhat different direction. I got interested in the problem of the relationship between me, the maker, and the viewer. And, you know, I have to say right from the get-go that I was suspicious of this relationship and tried to distort and manipulate it in ways that whatever way I could, but I failed to realize at that point that in some respects, Vito Acconci had been doing this in his own way in the late 60s and early 70s in a whole string of really wonderful videos. But I wasn't really tuned into that at the time. And instead, I was more involved with something big that was happening in Buffalo, where I was teaching, among younger artists there, that included a group around an organization called Hall Walls, namely Robert Longo and Cindy Sherman and Michael Zwack and Nancy Dwyer and a bunch of other people. And they're friends from the West Coast that they were in touch with at Cal Arts, which included David Sally and Jack Goldstein and a couple of other people like that, and then a group in New York who also showed up in the Pictures show that's been talked about and written about so much. And becoming familiar with these people's work was very interesting to me because although they liked media and I really sort of like ran counter to an interest in the dominant media, they were also interested in using images that reflected a relationship between the viewer and the work. So one of the remaining questions was, what then is an artwork supposed to do? How is it supposed to function? Is it a heroic gesture or what? And if it's inevitably a memorializing or heroicizing of its subject, then what should that subject be? And I thought, well, it seemed to me that this might be what it's doing, is heightening an image. And so I chose to heighten images which struck me as deficient or defective, because I felt that this might reveal something. As I have a short sample of some of the work that I was doing at that time. This is called Accordion. Let's see if I can get this to play. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but in this short piece, what I basically did was to, I had this old out-of-tune accordion, and I crawled up on a ladder sort of to put myself in a heroic sort of position, and then played this accordion in the most wretched way I could possibly manage. Now this is, that's not it. I want to go back to menu. Here we go. Menu. See, here's accordion. Okay, so, and it sort of goes like this a little bit. There's the ladder, and then I climb up the ladder. And this is like a pedestal, you see. It's sort of like a parody of sculpture. And then I really like this piece because it's so horrible. So pathetic, really. Okay, so it goes on like this for 7 minutes, and you see, like, just on and on and on and on, and it's, yeah, and then I get down from the ladder, of course. Okay, so the thing about that is that this was this was around 1980, and I was invited to perform some piano work in New York as a part of the New Music New York Festival. And so I performed some completely inadequate piano music, slightly romantic piano music, and everybody hated this. It wasn't good music, and it wasn't formally revealing, and it was, it had to do with something else. I kind of liked that, and I went on to further develop this idea in this film called Beholden to Victory, which is a film in which I decided to position the viewer and the work and the maker in a relationship that I could install within the work. And I felt that there was an authority relationship involved, that I was in charge in some sense, but I wanted the audience to be in charge, so I wanted the audience to feel in charge of their viewing situation and in charge of the work. How could I do that? Well, what I took as a metaphor was the military, and I sort of assigned, I developed two roles. One was an officer role, and one was a soldier role. The officer is in charge, and the soldier is follows orders. And for my way of heroicizing the roles was not to heroicize the officer, but to heroicize the soldier. I felt that this was what I wanted to do. It's too easy to put the general on a horse in the middle of the, in the middle of the intersection. I wanted to basically take the soldier role and amplify that. So I made a list of rules, like the officers, of course, could swear and give orders, and they would be upset about things, and the soldiers were never upset about anything. They didn't really care about anything. They were basically slackers, and they could change their mind as rapidly as they wanted, and they could they didn't swear or use any mature language at all. And so then I thought, well, this means that the audience, of course, will be in charge, and they'll look at this film and they'll think, I wanted them to think like, well, what kind of damn film is this? Like, this is a stupid film. What's the matter with the filmmaker? They should make a better film than this. And so I wanted the audience to be in charge, so I shot everything from above that I could, and I made mistakes, but I tried to shoot from above, so I'm looking down. Most films are shot sort of looking up, you see. I wanted to look down on all of this. I want the audience to feel like very superior. So this resulted in Beholden to Victory. I'm going to show you one or two very short clips from this. This is David Anton. Let's see. He makes a statement at the very beginning here. Yes.
War is combat. It's all I can tell you. You're never ready. It's always on you. Nothing you can do about it, but go out to meet it like men.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the soldiers training, and they get paddled, as you see. I had a number of sequences that were different settings for enacting these. This was all shot in Super 8, by the way, which is why it looks so grainy. And so let's see. The rest of this training sequence is a little further down. I think it's, yeah, this is nice. I like these guys doing jumping jacks.
They're tough. It'll be a good war.
Okay, so it was interesting to me that when I showed this, one person came up and told me that he had been in the service and that this was exactly what it was like, which I was. Now, this was shot in California in 1980, and at the time, I had just become friends with Tony Oursler, who I mentioned earlier. And I invited him and his roommate, Mike Kelly, to do a sequence, and they did. And I thought you'd enjoy seeing that. Here they are. I didn't have an officer at the time for them to play off against, but they did the role perfectly. And then they said, "You want to do some more?" And I said, "No, you just did everything I need." So. There's just this short sequence.
Cocked and ready to take it, see?
If this gun gets broken, I'm gonna say you broke it. You get dirt in this gun, and I'll say you broke it. Pass all that over here. Maybe we can fix it here. Hey, you want to see something? No. Now, why are we in this? We're Mahoney. It's Mahoney. I hope Mahoney's not. You
That
think
was
the
an
patrols,
officer.
Z stations over there? You think maybe they're close? Probably. See? We can't leave tracks. if the other guys see the tracks, they'll come and see us.
Oh,
They'll come and see us.
let me help.
I don't think... Ow!
Is it this way?
Look at the kind of stones they have here.
Good. Can I shine this?
A stone in this area would mean that I think... Well, wait. If you remember last night when Sergeant Mahoney took us all to the latrine? Oh man! And those guys last night, they kept eating.
Did you hear about the guy who fell?
Hey! Ah! I can't get this to work. Hey!
Okay, so
Now, another thing you
okay, so I was really interested in the audience when they viewed this, sort of taking up the attitude of like, what kind of film is this, and what kind of morons are these, and all of that kind of thing. Well, I showed like I had finally 2.5 hours of this footage. I showed it in New York, and the first people who walked out were the underground filmmakers, because it was like about military and so forth. And then the structural filmmakers all walked out because, like let's, I mean, obviously this is like some kind of other thing. Then all of the artists, filmmakers walked out, and basically everybody hated the film, and I thought it was very successful. You see, like everybody understood how negative, how their own, but they really felt these feelings instead of understanding that this was like part of the design of the film, that you take this attitude on the part of the audience, which is a little bit like, you know how people like to look at grade B movies because they suck? It's sort of like where you internalize an ironic attitude. And this is not something that really has any traction in 20th century critical analysis or ideology or understanding. And so this didn't work. And I was disgusted. So I decided, well, okay, I guess that that the truth is somewhat different. Basically, what's going on here is that audiences want to be insulted, and they want to be, instead of being put in this position where they are really in charge, what they really want is they want to be subjugated. And this turned out to be pretty true, I felt. I made this short tape called In Line, which was designed deliberately to try to just like insult the audience as much as I possibly could. Insult them, insult their family, and so forth. I'm going to show you this short, this is about 7 minutes. Let's see. It's called In Line, as in like stay in line, get you in line, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's see. Supported disc not available. Come on, give me a break. Okay, let's yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's see here. Okay.
Jerry, I understand that you caught our act last night. Was that so?
Yes, I always like to turn on the set and see what's on, and I can tell you I am delighted to speak.
You're looking at videotapes. Who's in charge? I'm in charge. I can stare you down. You see, it's important for me to be in control. It's important for me to be able to keep you in line. If I can't keep you in line, I'll have to hypnotize you. Don't forget that it's important for you to stay in line. It's not important for me to stay in line, it's important for you to stay in line. Here, move over a little bit. Move over. Good. Just move a little bit. Now, blink your eyes. Your eyes feel very heavy. Blink, blink, blink once. Just blink one time. You won't miss anything. Nothing at all.
Getting much more research-oriented this year. I even, on one of the other interviews today, I guess passed a snide remark, do the cable operators understand this research that Disney has done?
You still think you're in charge. You still think you're running this. I'll show you. I'll show you what I can do. I can make you think of anything I want to. Let's see you think of a rubber glove. Let's see you think of what time it is. Think what time it is. Now I want you to think of something else. I want you to think of an ass. Think of an ass. Do you still know who's in charge here? Do you know who's in line here? Do you know who's in line? Let's see. I think I'll have you think about Webb Pierce.
I played here down the years, and after so long, dear, I came to wipe my tears.
Maybe I should have you think about an apartment building.
Sweetheart, just one more time. In your next letter, please want to be kind.
And now do you know what I'm going to make you think about? I'm going to keep you thinking about something important. It's time to think about your father. Think about your father. Your father! 50 pounds of balls and no
no dick. Your father couldn't even get it up. One time. Your father, he used to have to go out to get anything going, and then he got the car going.
I have my
But
jacket
that
off
was
here
doing
because in a
good
moment
for
I'm gonna fire
him. What do you think the meaning of that is, huh? What do you think the meaning of that is?
It will cover the Baltimore Orioles, the Washington Capitals, and the Washington Bullets, in addition to some college and high school activities as well. Jane?
Ours is the Sonic Super Channel, primarily Seattle Sonics, with also a lot of Pac-10 basketball, including University of Washington Huskies and Big East basketball.
Okay, well, I'm going to try and fire it here. You got any tips for me?
You're doing pretty well thinking about who's in charge here, huh? But you still don't believe me. You still think you have to be seduced. You think I have to seduce you. Keep you watching. Well, maybe I don't, and maybe I do. You think I'm nasty. You bet I'm nasty. Here, take a look at this. All right. Let's give this a go, huh? Now we'll see who's watching who. Ready?
Okay. Yeah. Now, let's see. How do I get back to blah, 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 menu? Yeah. Okay, so I had been working with, for some time with thoughts about history. I did tried to do a period piece on Egypt, ancient Egypt. This piece called No Europe was an idea about how maybe white people could have been primitive people in America instead of discovering America. And so this was like a piece with us playing, like naked savages, and the Indians playing civilized people, and instead, so, here I am, like saying,
Jeez, I gotta get home.
wait a minute, I'm saying like, wait, see, like, this is,
Honey, I'm coming. Jeez, I gotta get home.
yeah, okay. So this was a sort of a piece that I envisioned as being sort of like a reverse sci-fi. Oh, I can't stop it now. Do I want to quit? Okay. But later, I became very, in part through interest in trying to figure out how music had, how music theory had propagated itself in the ancient world, and actually seemed to me to have become responsible for the beginnings of Western mathematics, philosophy, and logic, which is another whole theme that I could develop, but I'm not going to do that right now. But I did become quite interested in the in ideas about. Wait a minute. Let's see. What is this? In ideas of having to do with with history and the way of and the ways in which it might be possible to use the Western tradition in a constructive way. I mean, the past is what is with us already, and this is part of our materials. And I felt that it would be important to examine this. And at an early point, now I'm moving up to the last decade here. I'm moving up to the last decade. This is a recording of a performance piece I did at Monkeytown, downtown, in 2008, and Marie Lossier is here. She edited some of this in this form, but this was a piece based on some of my interest in perspective and the Quattrocento scene in Italy, and in particular, this has to do with the most famous image in the world, I'm told, which is the Vitruvian Man image of Leonardo da Vinci, where, you know, with the man with 4 arms and 4 legs. And so I decided that this was such a false and spurious image that I should parody it, and I did that by using 2 cameras to produce 4 arms and 4 legs and then mix them on the screen. And then I mixed a quad music track to go with this by attaching wires to my toes on either foot, putting the other end of the wires in my mouth, and then bowing them with another wire that I held in the 2 hands like this, so I could sort of bow the 2 wires like this. And I had 4 pickups then on these wires. And so I had quad sound, and in order to suggest that my attitude toward this, that I felt that I was a prisoner of this image, I bought a prisoner uniform, which you will see here, and I'm just going to play you a minute from around the beginning of this scene. Like here I am at Monkeytown trying to do this, and I'll try to find one with the image with 4. There's one. Okay, so yeah, here let's just look at this. Okay, so that's really nice, but we can't play it all because otherwise that'd be all we'll do. So I'm going to stop that here because I want to show you a couple of more sort of like more recent things. And in fact, I promised I'd show a new thing. Wait, let me get back out of here. Come on. No. Oh, I see. I have to. We'll stop, go back, and now we'll take this out. I want to show you a piece. It's a brand new piece, but it's one that actually was recorded in 1982, I think, 1982. It was shot in 1982, but it was shot on film and then with separate sound, black and white film, and I could never afford to put the thing together, marry the print, and so I didn't, and only recently had this transferred, and now it's ready to go, and I've never shown this before. It's called Palace of Error, and this is a theory film. So I hope you hate it. I mean, I hope you like it. Hate and like being sort of the least relevant aspects of the presentation. Yeah. Oh, wait. Supported disc is not. Don't worry, it's going to work. I think it's going to work. It better work. Okay, let's see if it doesn't work. What do I do then? Oh, what's this? Here we go. Okay, so let's go to view, full screen. So Barb, you say that images which establish differences or distinctions are virtuous?
Well, virtuous is the same as perverse. Yes, of course. We know that virtue is a negative value.
All right, see, it implies a differentiation established in order to establish a sense of intrigue, and that's perverse. That's perversion.
Because of its relation to desire?
Well, because of the fact that desire is not consequentially a function of the shadow of the virtual, but is in fact a product of differentiation, of distinction, and always was a product of distinction.
And thus isolated from the imaginative object.
Well, I'm interested in how this involves the present, how this relates to the present, how it involves the present, and whether we can find the virtual in the present or the virtuous in the present.
The virtuous, by delineating these distinctions, blocks the imagination.
And therefore it isolates itself in the presence.
And defines things out of existence.
So what we need to do is...
It implies power.
We need to examine particular images and to see the ways in which they represent aspects of these conditions, present aspects of these conditions. In other words, the ways in which the virtuous may arrive and contaminate an image through a new distinction which was undetected. Do you think we're always conscious of this? Do you think it's a function of every moment? Distinction, difference, virtue?
Okay, values are the product of metaphor. In the contact between the structure of our unconscious, metaphor, and the real world. Metaphor is the technology of the creation of values. The interaction between value and metaphor is the source of differentiation, perversion, and of authority. The metaphor and the value should be interactive within one image. Like intra-interactive within one image. The imagination checks the reign of value like fascism is like a slightly organized mass. The unimaginative value is desire. The dead value is desire. Fascism is motivated by possession and then remaining at the site of the possession to ensure bondage of the idea.
To refuse to relinquish a metaphor is to fall victim to the bondage of desire. Fascism is a prime case of that.
Possession by the imagination includes the ability to relinquish. Possession by the application of values excludes the ability to relinquish.
It implies a wholehearted acquisition of a given thought technology.
We have examined the state of art to the best of our circumstances, and we found it necessary on the basis of what we've discovered there to revise all of the great intellectual traditions of Western culture, including psychoanalysis, literature, linguistics, metaphysics, down the line, basically with the interest of not so much protecting these disciplines as throwing them out. I think that our basic motivation is necessary to approach in terms of the kind of concepts we've been evolving toward. So, fundamentally, our interest is in destroying the hierarchy of these meta-technologies, these technologies of thought organization, which all depend on differentiation and become perverted.
And it's not even so much, as far as I'm concerned, with destroying them as simply the observation that they are merely technologies. They're merely thought technologies. They will atrophy and die of their own accord.
Well, I think they pretend to something beyond that, and this is part of the problem. They pretend to distinction and differentiation.
Differentiation is the result of transaction in language. Dead metaphors are the byproduct of the application of values. Value is inhibition of the imagination and the source of dead metaphors.
Well, the nature of the project is not to locate and
The imagination interacting with the virtual is the movement of consciousness. All right, so come on.
The virtual is not so much the anti-shadow of the consciousness, but rather the negative projection.
Well, I just have a question as to what that would have to do with practical discourse. Well, and I'm not so sure that that relates to our interests. After all, you have to realize that metaphysics is a practice. For example, these theorems we're proving.
It's like jumping outside the frame of reference.
Daggone. I mean, frames of reference we don't really need.
Well, you just need, well, it doesn't even matter how many. It's not a particular number. It's just the particular ability to jump outside them.
I think of these as historic moments.
Oh, excuse me.
I think of these as historic moments. I don't think they can be that bad.
Well, historic moments only in the negative sense. And it's difficult to really define what we mean by history until we have a sort of post-Hegelian dialectical methodology.
Well, reading this new book on the virtual here, I've been impressed about the way in which food,
it nourishes the soul in the way that one might say that virtual nourishes the soul.
Okay,
So what is it?
What is what?
The virtual. What do you guys mean by the virtual?
well, what I think of as the virtual is the anti-shadow of consciousness. And it's the source of gesture, like the gesture of the tongue in eating, for example, or the gesture of the sex organ, the gesture of the wallet.
In regard to art. Well, I think of it not so much as an anti-shadow, but more of a negative projection.
Okay, so that's something new. Something old, something borrowed, something blue. Okay, so let's see. I tried to, oops, hey, stop.
So Barb,
That's enough of that. What I'd like to do is turn the lights up and just see if any of you have any comments or questions, because maybe we have a little time left over, I hope. Not much? Some? A little? Oh, shoot, okay, well, I have to give the audience a little opportunity for a response, but if you're in the, oh no, they're not even in the dark. Okay, so anyone? Meanwhile, I'll get this out of here. Cool. Oh. Yeah, I did. Well, around the time following my production of the Army film, which I showed just a little of, Beholden to Victory, I decided that there had been a lot of elements of that structure that I really didn't quite understand or hadn't analyzed sufficiently. It became too complicated for me to feel comfortable that I had structured a way of dealing with the relationship between the actors and the relationship of the actors to the work as a work, and the relation between those things and the director, me, or the audience. And this then turns into a sort of five-way diagram. And I decided that I should do another project that would explore some aspects of this. And so in order to pick a different power structure that I could sort of use as a generic form, I decided to use the women's prison movie as a model. And so I built I kind of like this, and in fact I had found in my travels, I had found, I'd bought for some reason, I bought a whole stack of sort of like very ordinary cotton print dresses that were on sale in some bag sale or something in Connecticut one time. So I thought, oh yeah, well okay, I'll build then I'll build a prison, I'll build a jail, and we just have a women's prison. I don't care if the people in the film are men or women or what, but we'll have guards and we'll have inmates. And so I built a jail set, and I roped all kinds of people that I knew into being prisoners or being guards, mostly prisoners. And so I had Mike and Tony come back, and I had also like a lot of the local rockers who were all friends of mine up in Buffalo and so forth. So, and I wound up shooting about 4 hours of black and white film, 16 film, of this, basically highly unstructured situation, which I was very happy with in some respects, but then troubled in other respects, because I thought, this looks okay, but it's kind of murky, and this black and white reversal film, it's like not exactly thrilling. I should have some color. I did shoot one roll of color, a 10-minute roll of color, and so I knew what it could be, but I couldn't afford to shoot color. I thought the sound wasn't very good because I could hear the camera a lot of the time. It was an unblimped 16 camera. And by and large, it was just unsettling. And I thought, well, I'll just wait. I'll wait until I can afford to shoot color. So I waited 30 years, and now I can shoot color. And I can shoot color without noise because I just shoot it in HD. And it's compatible, basically compatible with 16 film, black and white film. And so it's time to actually shoot the second part of the film. So my next project over the whenever it's possible for me to organize this, which is a little awkward for other reasons, is because, for one thing, in 30 years, what's happened is that a lot of my cast members who were like around in their early 20s, they're now in their early 50s, right? Yeah, so I want to get them back and then ask them to do the same things again. I'll play their parts for them and ask them, like as though they've been in jail all this time, and they still do the same things, which I think is really what happens. So when I announced this and approached people about it, it kind of erupted into a sort of craziness because people were really, really interested in the idea. And I could see that a lot of the cast members were impelled into a process of recapturing moments from their youth, basically. You know, like now they're 50 and then they're thinking like, oh yeah, like, geez, you know, I don't know what all. And other people, of course, had changed. You know, so one woman who was pretty wild at the time has become a very responsible Buddhist, and you know, then this person is like a faculty member in this department in Nevada. One person is working for an architecture firm in London, you know, and so forth. So it gets to be very tricky. But this is sort of like a project that I'm now involved in trying to push forward. And I don't think, you know, I kind of lost interest in some of the issues having to do with authoritarianism and the relationship between the work and the actors, blah, 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 and all of that, because I realized that the stridency of having the same people just sort of like in this sort of like position of, you know, like coming back and playing the same roles at a different point in their lives, really, will obviously overwhelm any other set of interests, you know. But that's what that's about. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll have a chance to show that to you one of these days. Keep your eyes out for that, because I think that'll be really fun when it happens. Okay, but if there's any other questions, you got to ask them quick, because otherwise she's going to shut it down. What? Ready? Okay, I'm going to count from 10 to 1. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. Okay. This is a nice space, even if it's a little formal, but it's been really nice to share some things with you tonight.